Speaking of rooting for movies to, do well and not flop, there's no real news this week other than the, I guess, more general lackluster performance of some like really big box office movies this summer. We do have like certain success stories that you can see, like the Super Mario Bros. Movie did super well, but that was kind of back in spring, and it still is in theaters because like those movies that are for family crowds, they do tend to stand way, way, way longer in theaters, and it usually is like in any good year, there's like one good family movie, and whatever the next one comes, it kind of just like cycles out, and there's always
Mm.
usually something for that. There's a lot of like counter programming that goes on where you program something. Maybe if there's a horror film that's something a bit more lighter. Usually tends to be, unless Warner Brothers and Universal, on the hand of Nolan, is doing a standoff, and you get Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day. Regardless, there were some movies that premiered, and they aren't doing too hot. Mainly being The Flash and Elemental are both tracking to be like one of the worst performing films in their respective universe, studio, whatever. I think The Flash came in like lower than Black Adam on its opening weekend. It dropped like quite a bit from already having quite a weak opening, which usually big drops that are like 50-60% plus tend to be the case if it's like a huge opening. But it wasn't even that. So far it's grossed 150 million. Being a movie that arguably costs about like 250 million, it's unlikely that this will break even in the theatrical window. And I don't know how much they'll even be able to monetize it after the fact, because I don't know how much you can sell figures of Ezra Miller as the Flash, and how many people would actually want to get that. But yeah, that's that. And then Elemental was also the worst performing Pixar opening for them, I think, pretty much ever. Apart from the ones that obviously premiered on the streaming services, I think it came in even lower than Onward, and it's only grossed 70 million so far at the box office, and that's another like $200+ million movie. So long intro short to this, because they are success stories like for Asteroid City in limited release that made a shit ton of money, or Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Do you think Hollywood needs to change in a certain way, the way that they do these blockbusters? Was it just too dense, or was it something about these movies? I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you think, Lachlan?
I think the success of Wes Anderson and Spider Verse have got to do with the internet, though. That's the thing.
You think it's palpable that like the crowds of people?
I
Well,
think
no.
that people.
Look, I just had someone in the
Why?
theater, an 80-year-old guy, last night when I
Mm.
was doing a showing for Asteroid City in the theater that I work at. And he was like, oh, yeah. He was like, I'm the biggest Wes Anderson fan. And he like went off to describe me like his favorite moments from like, I don't know, from like Rushmore. It's like, okay, that's really cool. He really
Mm.
enjoys it. So if like maybe that's an anomaly there, and it's more the younger crowd that still is going out to see Wes Anderson. Uh, but I feel like the really younger crowd is just like redoing it in a quirky way on TikTok. So I don't know. I feel like it's just like that he's established enough, and people tend to go for it in the specific markets because it was out in 4 theaters in limited release, and I think had one of the highest performing per theater numbers for that limited run. And now in the expanded thing, well, I think the numbers aren't in yet for that. I think fully. It's like at about 7 million, but it was just like in really limited release so far. So I don't know if it will. It's also like, I think for a cast like this, you'd usually end up paying a shit ton of money, but because he's Wes Anderson, they're not as expensive, I assume. Um, so yeah, on Asteroid City, it's a bit like still, it had a good limited opening. I don't know if it will actually do well with a really competitive summer market.
But the other two movies that you were talking about,
Yeah,
obviously, what
Elemental
were
and
they?
Flash.
Elemental and Flash.
Yeah,
They, I mean, once again, no one's going to go see a movie they have no reason or want to see. People are more restricted with money. People don't want to go and see 4 or 5 movies a month. They're going to pick one or two.
yeah.
So you see in
So
a recent couple months, you're going to have Wes Anderson, you're going to have Spider Man, but then you've also got a Flash and you've got a Pixar movie. All right, cool. What am I going to go spend my money on? The Spider-Man movie that each Spider-Man recently has, even if it hasn't been that great of a movie, has delivered on being entertaining? Or should I go watch that Speedy Gonzalez movie where the guy beats people outside because I saw that on the internet? No, I'm not going to go see that. And then it's the same with Elemental and Wes Anderson, right? Wes Anderson has been
Yeah.
popping off on the internet recently, and he's always delivered in his films as entertainment. But
Yeah.
you know what has been entertaining, but they've seen it before? Elemental. If you've seen Zootopia, you've seen Elemental. If you've seen Inside Out, you've seen Elemental. So there's no reason to go see that movie again. But at least you know
Yeah.
that Wes Anderson movie is going to be different. So I think it's not that people are, there's nothing that Hollywood needs to change other than stop pumping out movies that have already been done, have already been remade, and give
Yeah.
us a spin on it, like you have with Spider-Verse, like Wes Anderson's doing. They're quirky, they're different. They're not the same movie.
But do you think there's also a correlation between Pixar's releases having been for Turning Red, for Luca, for Soul, on streaming without additional cost? That like these $200 million plus movies, do you think that has an effect on like families going out in theaters? Because all of them, Lightyear as well, didn't do well. Or like I guess Lightyear when they went back to theatrical didn't do well. You think that was just like because Lightyear wasn't a great movie as well, similar to Elemental,
I just don't think that
work?
I just don't think going to the cinema is as much of a family thing as it used to be.
Right.
Like, I don't see, when I go to a screening, I rarely see families going. Maybe I'm not seeing family movies.
Yeah, but like part of the success in the States especially was because there was like school break. I think just started when Spider-Man came out. That like it had like huge numbers with a lot of families going to see the movie as well. So I feel like people are still going. It just depends if there's enough buzz about a movie, and I don't know. You can't really bank on it being there just because it is a new Pixar movie or it is something in the DCEU that does like multiverse stuff. That's just not. And even Transformers is like, I mean, it's not doing horrible, but it's just been on a decline. I think they've only had in the Transformers franchise like 2 movies that grossed over $1 billion, which for a huge franchise like that, is kind of what you're hoping for success wise. But yeah, I didn't want to talk about numbers that much, but more if you actually feel like there needs to be a change in what type of movies are blockbusters, if they like need to be budgeted a bit more reasonably, a bit more on a smaller scale. And additionally, also, I think there were just some stories coming out, like some reports that on like working on Across the Spider-Verse was a pretty much a shit show a bit as well for some of the animators, and
Shaka.
basically like well, I was kind of hoping it would be different for this one, but even if the movie is great and people are giving it all the 5 stars in the world, you can't really bank on it just being all I don't have a saying for this right now. I'm just like picturing I don't know, chocolate and roses, which is not a saying, but I just came up with it. And someone also said like there's an animator that worked on it. There's no shot that the next one is coming out in 9 months because they already were like cranking it to get this one out, and they weren't really already working on the second one, which is crazy that like in 9 months they want to do the sequel to this, if apparently they're not really that far into the next one. But yeah, enough box office talk, or do you have anything else to add here?
I've said my piece.
Hoping for successes for Barbie and Oppenheimer though, and like the Mission Impossibles of the world too. Get to a really wide audience and find its market in the theatrical run.